This is the Thayer Podcast for Thursday, May 11th, 2023. This is the second in a series of columns about woke, a word standing for what some have come to call flagrant deviant behavior. I'll just call it the devil's work and leave it at that. Recently, allsides.com provided this. Whether being woke is a good or bad thing is a topic of fierce debate in America. In a 2023 Ipsos poll, 56% of respondents said the word woke means to be informed, educated on, and aware of social injustices. 39% said it means to be overly politically correct and police others' words. The term has very different connotations and meanings depending on your view. Woke is a term that generally refers to awareness of issues related to racism, discrimination, and social justice, and support of policies or cultural changes to address purported injustices and institute more social equity or equality. However, the term is used both positively and negatively by those across the political spectrum and carries very different meaning depending on who's wielding it and their view of purported social and racial justice issues, including whether they believe these are even legitimate issues in the United States, and whether proposed cultural, legal, and institutional reforms to address these purported issues would actually be helpful or harmful. Being woke is generally seen as a good thing by much, though not all, of the liberal left. In this view, someone who is woke is awake or has woken up to purported racial and social injustices in the United States. The idea that our laws and institutions purportedly uphold systemic inequality and injustice based on race, gender, and/or sexual orientation. Someone who is woke is likely to support what they see as needed cultural, institutional, and legal reforms to remedy such injustices. From this perspective, woke is a term of positivity and allyship. In this view, someone who is woke sees the ways in which racism, sexism, heteronormativity, classism, and other issues purportedly affect their daily life, and how our identity markers, such as gender, race, and sexual orientation, affect the way we and others are treated by the traditional American culture, legal system, and institutions. How about that? Heteronormativity. It really is a word. Hashtag Stay Woke often accompanies social media posts about issues such as police brutality, systemic racism, and the prison industrial complex, issues that the left sees as crucial to remedy and to address, being that they're rooted in implicit or explicit bias against minorities. In this view, being woke may mean someone supports necessary cultural and legal reforms, such as implementing diversity hiring, shifting funding from police to community programs, encouraging LGBTQ identities, eliminating misinformation online, implementing reparations, eliminating whiteness, and altering our economic system. In this view, woke people are critical thinkers who accurately identify key problems in American society. However, leftists, those who are farther left than liberals and who are highly critical of the American establishment, sometimes do not use this term positively, instead using it as a pejorative. They do not disagree with the underlying premise that inequality and social injustice negatively affect daily life in America, nor do they disagree with reform. But they use the term woke negatively to describe corporate liberal hegemony that they see as wholly performative and not helpful to overthrowing capitalism and instituting a more egalitarian society. In this view, woke is a person or corporation who pays lip service to reform, but does not actually achieve necessary revolutionary goals and, in fact, upholds the status quo. Those who hold this view use woke as a pejorative to target gentrified corporate urban liberals who perform in solidarity with stated revolutionary aims while not actually achieving anything good. Others, however, mostly in the center or on the right, but some liberals as well, use woke as a pejorative term for entirely different reasons than leftists. In this view, being woke is a negative thing because it describes people who encourage ideological conformity and seek to institute harmful reforms such as upending the traditional family structure, eliminating the gender binary, giving or taking things away from people based on race, opening our borders, defunding the police, refusing to prosecute crimes, rewriting history, eliminating market-based economies, canceling books and movies, and eradicating the American Constitution. Those who see woke as having a negative connotation typically deny that structural inequality due to racism or discrimination exists in the U.S., and attribute unequal outcomes to something other than unconscious bias. People with this perspective use the term woke to describe people and corporations that they see as either misguided or deliberately implementing a radical and sinister agenda to upset traditional Western norms and values that have historically served to create free and healthy societies. They see fundamental harm in the woke cultural claims that gender, man and woman, binary, is a social construct and that children should self-determine their gender. They disagree that America holds some people back due to identity characteristics and see wokeness overall as a threat to free speech. Woke are seen as only allowing speech in line with their worldview, canceling people who have dissident viewpoints, or pegging them as white supremacists, thus suppressing free thought and intellectual inquiry. From this perspective, the policies and cultural changes that the woke seek to achieve actually invert society by conferring status and benefits upon those who can claim to be part of a victimized group, rather than those who work hardest and produce the most value. They see woke ideology as the driver of a victimhood culture in which people would take away the rights, freedoms, and autonomy of others, and see it as justified in order to address their perceived victimization and unfairly elevate their group. Wokeness, then, is mostly about the will to achieve power rather than correcting injustice, and in fact only perpetuates injustice against certain groups. From this view, people who are not woke are the true critical thinkers because they reject what has become a hegemonic attitude and culture in America, the idea that society must be radically altered so that others are seen based on their group identity markers. Now, something from Epoch Times, penned by Jeffrey A. Tucker on April 24th. It's probably true that no top executive at Anheuser-Busch knew what the Bud Light marketing people were planning when they decided to deploy a transgender influencer to sell their beer. Soon after it happened, public disgust became obvious. 4 weeks the company was in denial, but then the CEO made a sterilized and robotic statement many would associate with the government that pretends all is well when everyone knows it isn't. The line on the street about Bud Light was that the problem would soon disappear, that the protests were by far-right conservative activists, and that consumers could care less. Mainstream media said the same thing. Finally, the company stepped up again to address the growing meltdown by putting both the vice president of marketing and her boss on leave. This move satisfied no one and further entrenched the consumer boycott that had spread to all the Anheuser-Busch brands. Can you recognize what's been happening? We're actually watching the rise of genuine consumer awareness, and the public is fighting back. Only a few years ago, we could have our differences over ideology, but they didn't invade our commercial spaces. For decades, large companies pretended to be politically neutral in order to maximize their public reach. It's been the same in every commercial space since the late Middle Ages. The consumer is the king in this realm, and politics doesn't belong. By the late 19th century, the commercialization of steel, rise of electricity, the mass availability of internal combustion, and flight, the telephone, and spreading of wealth occurred across all classes. It wasn't politics. It was the people's power through the market economy. Ideologues believe that political agitation should invade the whole of life, and as a result, much has changed due to woke ideology, which is the latest iteration of the deeply dangerous fanaticism that personal must always be political. The slogan was bandied about in the 1960s, but failed to capture commercial institutions serving the public's desire for products and services at a good price. However, with a series of small steps and then big ones, the marketplace has become seriously politicized. The advent of ESG and DEI movements are now invading the commercial world. It's an attempt to force the marketplace to serve political priorities above all else. Most of us have gone about our business without realizing what was going on. In recent years, consumers have been stunned as management layers ballooned and cheap credit seemingly gave the business world license to pursue politics over quality products and services, thus twisting company culture and putting ideology over profitability. They favored the protected, privileged, and Ivy-educated over people with the company, and they did it with brazen acts of racial and gender tokenism that punished competence and rewarded political loyalties. That's how Anheuser-Busch ended up in its current situation, which could ultimately prove devastating. The controversies the Bud Light ad unleashed are nowhere at an end because of what it represents, namely, how detached a high-end corporate culture has become from the customer. Bed Bath & Beyond announced that it will be seeking bankruptcy protection from creditors and close all of its stores after 56 years in business. It's an example of the slogan, "Go woke, go broke." The company replaced merit with quotas. When the owner of MyPillow became a vocal Trump supporter, they dumped the whole line, even though it was among their best sellers. And now look, MyPillow is doing great while Bed Bath & Beyond is going belly up. Everyone watched in awe when Elon Musk took over Twitter, fired 4 of every 5 workers, and created a product that works better than ever. His actions were publicly condemned, but in private, they're being copied in slow motion. Today, everyone is watching the meltdown at Bud Light, and the spectacular failure of Bed Bath & Beyond shows how dangerous it is to allow politics to invade hiring and marketing. Consumers could eventually kill woke ideology because of the economics of the marketplace. It puts a hard limit on fanaticism. So for any company that relies on real people to purchase goods and services, going woke could be the kiss of death. The corporate sector has to become uncorrupted from its failings because the public is finally waking up. We have to be careful about how we use our money, and we should be rewarding companies that serve the public, not elite political interests. I have no idea whether we've covered all the bases on this subject, so next time we'll try to tidy things up a little bit and attempt to come to some factual or political conclusion on this issue. Meanwhile, improvise, adapt, overcome. Semper Fi.